Hello, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, I have a new friend with me. And Katherine, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and what you love about what you do?
Okay, thank you for having me. I applaud you in your work. I think this is a great medium and great opportunity. My name is Katherine Amoukhteh, and I'm a founder of Esports College and Career Pathways. Our tagline is that we provide a safe and supportive environment for gamers to pursue their dreams while focusing on diversity and inclusiveness. And what gets me up every day is the fact that I try to have impact in our industry in a positive way. I try to reach those that are underserved. I try to work on diversity. We take on projects based on those criterias, not necessarily on how much we make on it. And so for us, at least, those on our team, that's really important to us.
Wow, that's impressive. You're doing a lot of great things all wrapped up into the same mission.
We try. It's
Mhm.
not always easy.
Yeah.
We bump ourselves against, things all the time. And we figure out why this is so hard because it was easy. Someone else would have done it already, right? And so we
Mhm.
remind ourselves of that because sometimes it gets a little like, oh no, another wall, another wall.
hmm And you mentioned diversity, and I'm gonna bring up that most gamers and most people involved in gaming are men. So right there, that you're a woman in a male-dominated field, I would have to imagine.
Yes, and I've been in this space for a long time. I'm actually an engineer by training. My
Wow.
first part of my career was in engineering, so same thing, right? That
Mhm.
we find, when I went to college, it was at that time, I don't know, maybe if we were lucky, we get 15-20% females in engineering,
Yeah.
and that hasn't changed. And the same thing is in esports now. But I think that it needs to start now. Like I've always said, our hashtag, yes, you now. We need to take a step forward. And I'm not a typical gamer, right? So I'm not the right age, I'm not the right sex, so what I try to tell people is that the actually we as a group is not, females in general are gamers. We represent half the population that are gamers. It's competitive gaming that we're not into, but as a gaming,
Oh,
those of us who identify as being video game players, we are.
I did not realize that half the gamers are female, but the ratio changes when you get into the competitions. Did not realize that. That's very interesting. Very interesting.
Right, the same kind of criteria works its way into a lot of different industries, right? Like engineering, for example. Studies have shown that if I was going to hire someone, for a position, it could be the same position, same duties, just the way I phrase it, the adjectives that I use, the criteria that I use will change the landscape of who applies. Like
Mhm.
if I say this is highly competitive and I want you to be aggressive and ambitious and be out there and make changes and forge new roads, that will probably not get me as many females. I say this is a great opportunity to work in a very cohesive environment, to network with people. It's a teamwork endeavor, and that we can make strides together. You will find a lot more females that will apply to that role.
I agree, because just the way you changed the wording of that, I had a complete shift in the way I was feeling. Complete shift. So
Right, right,
that's pretty
right.
smart. Pretty smart. It would be interesting to see if other industries could change their framing of the job description. Like in my field, it's 85% male. And now I'm going to start
Right.
paying attention to how they advertise for those positions to see if they're using the proper word, the better wording to attract women. Because like you, we want to attract more women into our industry. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think also it's not just that, but I think also that's the qualities you want in a teammate, right? The
Mhm.
qualities you want in an employee, someone who wants to work together with others because, we say in engineering school, no matter what a great coder you are or a great designer you are, no one works, in an environment by themselves. I don't care how great your talent is. You're going to have to work in part of a team.
Mhm.
And so I always say that, it's not just to attract women, but honestly, these are the characters that you want in a team player, want in an employee, want in a partner. And so therefore, I think we're hurting ourselves by saying that, we want people that are aggressive and that, it's going to forge new roads and, and that could take this and run with it, which is all great things as well, but, they can't do it by themselves.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. We were talking a little bit before, but I wanted to bring it on our video as well. A year or two, I was reading a research report about gaming and esports and how big it's becoming and how advanced it's becoming. And at that time, it was beating out, like, the major championship games were beating out major sport events like the Stanley Cup and the World Series and the Sweet 16. And at that time, the only major sporting event it didn't beat was the Super Bowl, and it wasn't very far behind. So I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Well, I think we surpassed it. Of course, I know it's amazing, right? I mean, of course, this year's
Right.
Super Bowl is going to be a little different, right? I mean, I
True.
think that the whole season has been odd. But as an industry, though, we just hit in 2020, we booked the $1 billion mark. We're
Wow.
officially now 1.1 billion, I believe, as an industry. So yeah, it's growing. It's big, and I spend most of my time talking to different people, parents saying that it's a real thing, and administrators saying it's a real thing, right? They each hold a different piece of the pie. But I think we're now starting to understand that there are. I think the statistics is that 91% of people between the age, I think, like 4
Mhm.
to 27 consider themselves a gamer.
Wow.
91%. Okay.
Wow.
Um, and so administrators, I don't think that they realize that their current population have a huge population of gamers, that esports is a great way to engage that population, make them feel part of the community. Because, if you're on the basketball team, right, at college, or you're on the football team, you're part of the community, same as high school. you know
Hmm.
but esports is a great way to include a different part of the population, to make them feel that they're part of the school, and have school spirit and so on. And so I think that that's starting to kind of break through now. Colleges are now offering a lot more scholarships. At last count, I think there are over 100, and I can't remember exactly, 25 perhaps, schools in the US that offer substantial scholarships. I'm not saying the $500 or $300 scholarship when the tuition is 40,000, right? But
Yeah.
thousands of dollars in scholarship to really recruit, and not just players now. I mean, they recruit everyone within the esports ecosystem. So they're going to recruit casters, producers, graphic designers, writers who can write blogs and, do podcasts and so on. And so it really, truly, I think the esports ecosystem is really coming to its own. I think both sides are now coming together and realizing that parents are shocked, like, what, really? My
Mhm.
kid can go to school playing video games? Yeah, they're part of a team. You know,
That's amazing.
Myself, I have kids in college, right? And one of the things, when you send off your 17 or 18-year-old to school across the country, you're worried, right? And oh my God,
Yeah.
they're by
Yeah.
themselves. But when they're on a team, they have a whole different support system. We talk about scaffolding, for our children. Some kids need more scaffolding than others. But for those, I think it's when you're 17, 18, going across the country to a new place, it's great, in my opinion, to have some support around them as well.
Yeah, that is so, so true, because if they are on a team of any kind, they have an immediate family connection.
Yes.
Whereas, the other kids going to college, they're alone, and, that's a really hard, you're starting over. You're the low man on totem, and you got to start all over again. So to have a couple people around you in the beginning, I think would be a huge comfort zone for the parent and the
Right.
child.
Right. And I think states have. Absolutely. Well, I think more for the parents.
Yeah.
But I think also is that, states have shown that if as a student, whether in high school, and I do a lot more work in the high school arena because I used to be a high school teacher, was that if a child going through a school system, if they have one friend, right, that improves the percentage of completing, whether high school or college, by a huge percentage. So,
Really?
that's why I say, no, the connection of, having someone there with you to go through it is huge. At least at the high school level, it's huge.
Wow, didn't even think about that, but it makes complete sense, complete sense. Now, you mentioned
right?
that you work with a lot of high school kids. And so what is your role in, within the esports college and career pathways? What do you do?
Right. So, like our name says, I know it's a long name, but we figured out that that was very descriptive and kind of gives people idea what we do. So, what we try to do is we try to provide a pathway,
Hmm.
for the gamer, whether it's from middle school, a lot of times, all the way through high school, then to college. And so, this pathway that we're trying to provide, this bridge, right, is really to say, okay, if you want to go to college, you can use esports, as to get scholarship, or just be part of a team. You can go
Hmm.
to that college, try for the team, be part of the team and have that instant family and instant, camaraderie and teamwork around you, right? And the other one is that esports is a very new industry, but it's also gives a lot of opportunity for kids who don't have a 4-year degree to get into the profession and make a good living at it.
Hmm.
I'm sure those streamers. I'm very cautious in saying that. And I try to talk to parents about this. Yes, there are streamers, like Ninja, who make millions of dollars, right? But for every ninja, there are, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of kids who don't. I think the average stream, on I think on Twitch is like one viewer. Okay, and so to get that build that viewership, it's difficult to do. It takes time. And anyway, and so we talk about that and what's realistic. But there are real, true, great careers that you can have in esports. With the associate degree, for example,
Hmm.
and
That's,
of course with a bachelor's degree. And we try to kind of talk about those opportunities.
yeah, that's great guidance because I mean, I didn't even know, like I knew the gaming part of it. And obviously I know the behind the scenes, there's a lot of behind the scenes, but there's a couple of the avenues I didn't even think of until you mentioned them here. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yes,
So
and I think that's where the connection needs to be.
yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Now, how have you had to pivot during the pandemic? And I know, I know in the beginning the gaming was a big help for these kids getting into the pandemic. So how did you guys pivot throughout the pandemic, and what have you seen I guess the trajectory through the rest of the pandemic for gaming?
Yeah, it's been tough, but I mean, I think it's, in the beginning, right? We're thinking, oh my gosh, this is great for esports, and it has been, so a lot of companies have pivoted. Those of us who used to be in-person events, whether at conferences or at the school level, we all pivot to be online. I think now you see a lot of online activity.
Hmm.
But the difficult part is that now that school has started, that, teachers are struggling with their students to just get them to learn English and math and science and history, right? And so what used to be, we used to be able to contact a school, by week 4 or 5, and they're hopping. They have their teams already done. They've already had tryouts already, and we can engage the students and and offer some online activities and so on. Now that has been really tough. I mean, there are some school districts in the U.S. where they reevaluate how they deliver their school every 2 weeks.
Oh,
So as a former high school teacher, I can't imagine, every 14 days I have to figure out, am I in person? Am I all remote? Is it going to be a hybrid? You know, that has really changed the landscape of high school esports, at least in this semester, in the fall semester. In the spring, let's see how that goes. A lot of colleges are now going to 100%, remote. And
mm.
so I think it's going to be only time will tell and see how it turns out.
Yeah, that's a challenge, and I have a senior in high school. Like my three kids are younger, so I'm not in college yet with my children, but I talk to a lot of parents who do have kids in college, like yourself, you mentioned, and it's been really, really difficult for them being at college, but being hybrid or being remote completely, and they're not really
Right.
happy about it.
Yeah, I think the connection is really hard, right? So I always say that as a teacher, it's seeing them face to face is was hard, honestly. And are you getting me? So
Yeah, yeah.
but on Zoom like this is even harder. I think it's better than nothing. I think it's better than not having school at all and not delivering your material.
Mhm.
But I think that being able to determine whether or not your students are understanding, if they're engaged, it's a lot harder to do.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Right,
In
right,
Zoom, thank God we
and
have it. Like we really all need to write a thank
right.
you to a Zoom company, you know. But at the same time, you have to, it's you have to work a little bit harder, to get that expression through, to get that, feeling through to the other side. You have to work at it a little bit more than if we're sitting across the table from each other. So
Right, right, right. We talk
different.
about, working together, that teamwork piece of it, right?
Mhm.
So I used to teach engineering. So, for us to do, a large part of the curriculum was talk about teamwork and being able to work together and, being able to collaborate. And so now that, everyone's on Zoom, I can only imagine how, there is some collaboration, but I think it's so much harder for me to reach across and go, gosh, is Regina really going to understand this? Or is she going to, how can I explain this to her, right? Where before we just kind of tap you on the shoulder and go, let me show you something.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but hats off to the teachers. I think that a lot of them, they work so hard. The ones that I talk to, try to deliver their material, in a fun and exciting and engaging way. That, hats off to them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very, very difficult job. Very difficult. And then, you have
Right.
the kids working, it's hard for them too. And then, you have the parents, and I am just so grateful that I don't have littles. Like, my kids are 8th grade through senior in high school.
Right.
If I had littles, like 1st grade, 2nd grade, kindergarten, I do not know what I would do. How would I work? I don't know how parents are handling this either, getting through it.
Right. Right.
Crazy,
Right. I
crazy.
know. And Adam, how do you get a kindergartner to give it back to you, right? You teach them something. How do they even show you what they've learned or what they understand?
I have
You know,
no idea. I don't,
I
but
know.
I'm just grateful I'm not there. But a lot of my friends are, and they're getting through it somehow. But I guess it's where that old saying is, you do what you have to do, and you get through it. So I'm just grateful I
Right.
don't
Get through
have
it.
to
Right.
do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you see in the next, post pandemic, let's pretend we're back in normal land. What do you see are some of the next steps for esports and your company?
Right. So, we are going to open up one of these days. I know it doesn't seem like now, right? It's so far in the future, but we will open up and we're going to, resume life as it used to be. And we're going to do this engagements, in person. And, as a former high school teacher, that's one of the things I feel very strongly about, in that, esports is great. I think that it's a great tool. It's a great way to engage part of the population that may not be too excited about being on campus. But at the same time, I think that the teamwork only works when you're in a team,
Right.
when you see each other and, and you and I are trying to work together to perform a task. It
Mm.
doesn't work quite as well, when we are on Zoom, effectively, right, with our headsets on. And and brings up another topic that I feel very strongly about, was toxicity, and what's acceptable behavior in the gaming environment. It's a huge problem in the industry right now. I think the more of us are working on it and aware of it, and I think those, we broke the $1 billion mark, right? One of the good things about having that much money in the industry is that there are more eyes on it. Quite frankly,
Mhm.
sponsors are not going to want someone sponsor someone that's going to be toxic.
Yeah.
That's going to be, inflammatory. That's going to make people feel bad. That is going to be a problem for them. And so I think, in my opinion, maybe not immediately, but the pressure is going to be so large to behave in an acceptable manner and what's acceptable. And I think that shift is going to be painful, because what it's toxic enough, I think, even in person, right? But it's even worse, I think, when you can basically go into your house, put headset on, and be anonymous, especially with gamer tags. You don't really know who you're talking to. um so I think that's going the veil is going to be drawn, and the curtain's going to be drawn, and I think that we're going to now see more eyes on the industry, and hopefully more pressure that oh, yeah, you may have a 500,000 followers, but no one's going to sponsor you because you don't act appropriately.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the
Yeah.
hope.
And that's
And
good. I
and
mean,
as that changes, I think, yes, and you see more diversity, right? Because you and I talked about diversity and inclusiveness before.
mhm.
That truly, I think that until what's acceptable is changed, and I don't mean that just females like us sit around
Yeah.
going, "Oh, yeah, you can't be sexist," but I think that the male counterparts have to also say, "This is not acceptable."
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Until that all changes, I think that we're not going. right, we're not going to see a lot of females or, in the scene until we see a major shift. But it's like, which comes first, having more females so that therefore they sit there and they tell their buddies, hey, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Or do we have a bigger change so that more females will come in? And I think that they have to happen together.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the younger ladies coming into careers now, I think they're going to shift the paradigm a little bit better than maybe my group did, because we came in where it was still acceptable for men to talk down to us and, do all the things they did in the, work world. But the younger generation, they were brought up differently, and that's not going to fly for them. So I think you'll see that shift hopefully sooner than we think it would normally happen. I think we're starting to see that shift a little bit each year. So that's good. That's really good.
Absolutely. I think like having mothers like us, right, who would sit around and say, that's not acceptable. That's not cool. I wouldn't take that.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
know my own daughter, for example. I mean, I think some of the things that I used to take. I'm honestly, I first started out, after school in my first job, I would like, okay, I'll bite my tongue. She'd be like, "Are you kidding me? No way! You know,
Exactly.
that's not cool with me."
Exactly.
So I think you're absolutely right. I think that the pressure that comes from both ends. So
Mhm.
the women in work would not accept it, and plus, there's more pressure.
Yeah, yeah. And as with our own experience, sometimes I think about some of the things that I had to endure, and I'm like, I wish the me now could go back in time and just sit in for that couple days and handle that situation a lot differently. That would be really cool, but you can't do it. It's life experience, right? You live and you learn.
Yeah, I
That's
think we're making strides, right? Like, back when my mother was working, I think that it's a little different than what we are when we went through even. So, I don't think we can skip steps, unfortunately. I think that we have to go down that path.
right, 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 right. So let's say, let's look into our future world where, do you have a retirement vision? Like when you're done working and want to move into the next phase of your life, how do you envision that for yourself?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think that at least for me, I'm the first generation that, where we no longer work for a company, right, for 20 years and then you retire.
Mhm.
There's no longer any benefit, you don't have retirement benefits. I was only a teacher for a couple of years, so I didn't retire with the teachers union, and so on. And so that's I think for my generation and people my age, that's a real question because it's no longer that there's a system in place that I'll be taken care of automatically.
Mhm.
So for us personally, my husband and I think we have we have to invest wisely as much as we can. We have two kids in college, so that makes it a little hard to put
Mhm.
money away. But I think that it's really on us to plan for our future. And I think also, what's we consider to be working until we retire, right? That has changed as well. I remember it used to be 62. When I was, in college, it was saying, retirement 62, right? And I remember when we went to 65, and that was a big deal. Oh my God, 65! I have to work till I'm 65. I thought at that time I'm never gonna get to 65. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm knocking on 65 soon. This is horrible. But but you're right. It's a good question for my generation. And how do we handle that? And what do we do? And how do we plan? I think
Yeah.
that's key, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just, yeah.
And who we talk to about that. I think that's the other thing. Who do we talk to about that? Who guides us down that path?
Right, right. Yeah. Well, it's working with yourself, your husband, your family, having those conversations, having those visions of, our retirement lifestyle is going to be different than our parents' retirement lifestyle. A lot of people will say, I'm going to travel more or live somewhere completely different. It's like you said, we don't have pensions. We're going to have to figure it out. And yeah, and Social Security, right now for most people, full retirement age is 66 or 67. So you gotta work.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right,
So,
right.
it's fun. It's fun. So if people wanted to follow you, learn more about your company, where would they go looking for information for you?
So my company's name is called Esports College and Career Pathways, but that's way too long to put on anything. So it's Esports CCP. And then we can find us on all social media as Esports CCP. Our website is esportsccp.gg is our
Okay.
website. And you can find out about all the different things that we do. We have projects that right now that we focus on women in gaming, for example. It's called The Hive. So we have weekly streams. We support women colleges and women high schools, which is our goal with that particular project. We also work with community colleges because we feel that that's truly a stepping stone. And I really, I'm a consultant in the community college for a couple of them in Southern California, and I've really realized how much of a role that system plays in getting, as a stepping stone, some cases, and other cases really gets to education to where they can have a great career. And so, but I don't feel there's enough attention and money put into community colleges because, they're not the USC of the world, right? They're not
Right.
Boise State, they're not the
Right.
big names. And so they don't have the endowments. They don't have all this millions of dollars pouring into it. The joke is like at UCLA, for example, the joke is they're fighting each other, like who gets to fund what projects. That doesn't happen at the community college level. And so we try to put some eyes on it. We try to form leagues so that, that as a collectively, as a group, perhaps they can get some attention, some sponsorship dollars, be able to buy, install and put in, gaming arenas and gaming centers so that they can support that community. So.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Really cool. Really cool. I know where I live in, I'm outside of the Philadelphia. I'm in a suburb, but I know they're building a gaming stadium
Mhm.
downtown near all of our sports complexes. So you've arrived when they're building a major stadium for your event. So
Absolutely. And you
congratulations.
also, you arrive when you're on ESPN, right?
Uh,
And I don't mean like 4 in the morning. I mean like in prime time. Okay,
yeah.
so you figure, the numbers got to be there. Okay, if ESPN's showing your event, then you definitely have arrived. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, you have arrived for sure. For sure. Well, I have so enjoyed this. I've learned so much and I can't wait to keep following you in your journey because it's amazing. And I just want to thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciated it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Regina, thank you for this opportunity. I think what you're doing is great.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. We have a little fun with it. That's all. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us and listening and watching our Women in Wealth series. Again, I'm Regina McCann Hess. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Well, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Forge Wealth. On LinkedIn, I'm Regina McCann Hess. And our website is forgewealth.com. Thanks. Have a great day.